You know what your problem is? You've never had to fight for anything in your life. Maybe it's time someone taught you what real struggle looks like. My mother-in-law said this to me across her dining room table on a Tuesday night, wine glass in hand, smiling like she'd just complimented my shirt. My wife nodded along. Her sister actually laughed. That was 4 months ago, and I should have seen it coming. We'd been married 3 years. Good years, I thought. I had a decent job in accounting. We had a small house in the suburbs, and her family seemed to tolerate me well enough. They were loud, opinionated, always had some criticism wrapped in concern, but I figured that was just how families operated. My own parents had passed when I was in college, so I didn't have much to compare it to. The comments started small. Her father mentioning how I'd probably never changed a tire. Her brother joking that I looked like I'd never been in a fight. Her mother asking if I'd ever had to go without anything, really without. I'd grown up middle class, worked through school, paid my own way through most things, but to them I was soft, untested, a placeholder husband who'd lucked into their daughter's life. My wife never defended me. She'd just change the subject or give me this apologetic look that somehow made it worse. Like she agreed, but didn't want to be rude about it. Then came the lake house invitation. My parents want us to spend a long weekend at the lake property, she said one evening while I was doing dishes. Just family. They really want you there this time. I'd been to the lake house once before, briefly, when we were dating. It was about 4 hours north, isolated, surrounded by dense woods and accessible only by a rough gravel road that wound through state forest land. Her grandfather had built it in the 70s as a hunting cabin, and the family had expanded it over the years into something more substantial, but still rustic. No cable, spotty cell service, generator power. I've got that presentation on Monday, I said. You can prep for it up there. Please. It would mean a lot to my mom. The way she said it made me look up. There was something in her voice. Not quite guilt, not quite excitement. Something rehearsed. Sure, I said. Why not? Her smile was too quick, too bright. Great. I'll let them know. The drive up was strange. Normally her family filled car rides with constant chatter, arguments about politics or gossip about relatives I'd never met. This time everyone was quiet. Her parents led the way in their SUV, we followed in our sedan, and her sister and brother brought up the rear in his truck. My wife kept glancing at her phone, even though we both knew there was no signal out here. You okay? I asked. Fine. Just tired. But she wasn't tired. She was wired. Her leg bounced. Her fingers drummed the door handle. Every few miles, she'd check the side mirror like she was making sure her siblings were still behind us. We arrived just before sunset. The lake house sat on a small peninsula, surrounded on 3 sides by dark water that reflected the orange sky. The nearest neighbor was allegedly 3 miles through the woods, though I'd never seen evidence of them. The main house was 2 stories of weathered wood with a wraparound porch. There was a separate shed for tools and storage, an old boathouse that leaned slightly to one side, and a fire pit near the water's edge. Home sweet home, her father announced, climbing out and stretching. Let's get unloaded before it gets dark. I noticed they'd brought significantly more supplies than a weekend required. Coolers stacked in the back of the SUV. Multiple boxes of non-perishable food. Extra blankets and sleeping bags. Her brother was unloading camping gear I'd never seen before. Planning to stay a while? I asked, trying to sound casual. Her mother laughed. You never know with weather up here. Better to have too much than too little. Dinner that night was tense in a way I couldn't articulate. Everyone was polite, almost artificially so. They asked about my work, my hobbies, my opinions on mundane topics. But underneath the pleasantries was this current of anticipation, like they were all waiting for something. After dinner, her father suggested we have drinks on the porch. The women said they were tired and went upstairs. Her brother claimed he needed to check something in the shed. That left me and her father in rocking chairs, whiskey in hand, watching the last light fade from the lake. You know, he said after a long silence, when my daughter told me she was marrying you, I had my doubts. I waited. This wasn't new territory. Not because you're a bad guy. You're perfectly fine. Stable job, decent enough. But I wondered if you had any steel in you. Any real backbone. I'd like to think I do, I said carefully. He chuckled. That's the problem right there. You'd like to think. But thinking and knowing are different things. A man doesn't really know what he's made of until he's tested. I suppose that's true. See, my father-in-law, he tested me. When I started dating my wife, he made me prove I was serious. Made me prove I could provide, could protect, could handle adversity. Best thing that ever happened to me. I sipped my whiskey, unsure where this was going. These days, men don't get tested anymore. Everything's too easy, too comfortable, too safe. He turned to look at me. Don't you ever wonder what you're capable of? Sometimes, I admitted. He nodded, satisfied. Good. That's good. We finished our drinks in silence. When I went upstairs, my wife was already in bed, facing the wall. I could tell by her breathing she wasn't asleep. Your dad was in a philosophical mood tonight, I said. She didn't respond. I lay there in the dark, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the lake house. Water lapping at the shore. Wind through the pines. Somewhere distant, an owl. My wife's breathing was too controlled, too measured. She was definitely awake. I woke up to voices downstairs. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains. My wife was already up and dressed. I checked my phone. 7:30. No signal, as expected. I pulled on jeans and a shirt and headed downstairs. The entire family was in the kitchen, packed and ready. Bags by the door, keys in hand. They all turned to look at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Morning, I said. What's going on? Change of plans, her father said. We need to head back early. Work emergency. All of you have a work emergency? It's complicated, her sister said. Family business stuff? I looked at my wife. You too. She nodded but wouldn't meet my eyes. Okay, let me grab my stuff. Actually, her mother said, and her tone made my stomach drop. We were thinking you could stay. I laughed. Stay? Here? Alone? It's not funny, her brother said, grinning anyway. It's a challenge. An opportunity. What the hell are you talking about? Her father stepped forward. We've been discussing this as a family for a while now. We think you've had things too easy. We think you need to prove yourself. So we're leaving you here for a week. Maybe 2. Depends on how you do. The words didn't make sense. I looked from face to face, waiting for the punchline. You're serious. Completely serious, her mother said. There's enough food here for about 5 days if you're smart about it. There's a stream about a mile east for water. The shed has basic tools. You'll figure it out. This is insane. You can't just leave me here. We can and we are, her father said. Consider it a rite of passage. Our gift to you. I turned to my wife. Tell me you're not part of this. She finally looked at me, and I saw it. Guilt, yes, but also something worse. Agreement. She believed this was necessary. It's not personal, she said quietly. We just want you to grow. By abandoning me in the woods. By giving you a chance to prove yourself, her father corrected. To us and to yourself. Her brother pulled out his phone and started filming. This is going to be great content. The moment of truth. Let's see if he begs. Something cold settled in my chest. They wanted a reaction. They wanted me to panic, to plead, to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. This whole thing was designed to humiliate me, to validate whatever narrative they'd constructed about my weakness. I walked to the porch and sat down on the steps. That's it, her father called out. No argument. Would it change anything? Well, no, but then there's nothing to argue about. I looked out at the lake, calm and dark in the morning light. You should probably get going. Long drive ahead. They stood there, confused. This wasn't the script. Her mother whispered something to her father. Her brother kept filming, waiting for the breakdown that wasn't coming. My wife came out onto the porch. Are you okay? I don't know yet, I said honestly. But I guess I'll find out. We'll call to check on you. There's a satellite phone in the house somewhere. Sure. I'm sorry it has to be this way. I looked up at her. Do you really think this is going to accomplish what you want it to? She hesitated. I think you'll understand eventually. Why we did this. Maybe. They loaded into their vehicles. Her brother kept filming until her father told him to put it away. As they drove off, kicking up gravel and dust, I watched them disappear into the trees. Then I went back inside and started taking inventory. The house was better stocked than they'd implied. The pantry had canned goods, rice, pasta, dried beans. The freezer in the basement was full, running on the generator. They'd left me propane for cooking, matches, a first aid kit, basic tools in the shed. This wasn't about survival. They'd made sure I wouldn't actually be in danger. This was about humiliation. About forcing me into a position where I'd have to come crawling back, grateful and defeated. I found the satellite phone in a kitchen drawer. It had battery. I could call for help right now. Could call a cab service from the nearest town, probably an hour away. Could end this whole thing immediately. Instead, I turned it off and put it back. If they wanted to see what I was made of, fine, but not on their terms. I spent the afternoon exploring the property more thoroughly. The shed had tools in better condition than I expected. Handsaw, axe, hammer, nails, various hand tools. There was a small solar panel set up on the roof that charged a battery bank, probably for lights. The generator was well maintained. The lake itself was clean, probably spring-fed. The old boathouse held a canoe with a slow leak and some fishing gear that looked decades old but functional. I found an overgrown path that led east, presumably toward the stream they'd mentioned. By evening, I made a plan. I cooked a simple dinner, rice and canned vegetables, and sat on the porch as the sun set. The satellite phone buzzed. A text from my wife. "How are you doing? We're worried about you." I stared at the message for a long time. The casual concern, like she'd forgotten something at home rather than orchestrated my abandonment. Like this was normal family behavior. I typed back, "I'm fine." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Dad wants to know if you need anything. There's a town about 12 miles south on foot if you need supplies." 12 miles. They'd researched it, calculated exactly how difficult they could make this while maintaining plausible deniability about my safety. I didn't respond. The next morning, I started working. The shed had lumber, probably left over from previous projects. I patched the canoe, sealed it with some tar I found in a dusty can. Took me most of the day, but by evening it was watertight. Day 3, I paddled the canoe around the lake. On the far western shore, I found what I was looking for, an old logging road, overgrown but still passable. It headed south, same direction as the town. Day 4, I walked the logging road. It was rough, muddy in places, but definitely drivable with the right vehicle. After about 5 miles, it connected to a maintained Forest Service road. Another 3 miles and I hit pavement. The town was small, maybe 1,500 people, one main street, the kind of place that existed to service the handful of lake properties and seasonal hunters. I walked into the general store and asked about work. The owner, a weathered woman in her 60s, looked me up and down. "You're staying at the Henderson place?" "That's my in-laws. I'm here for a few weeks." "Alone?" "Family couldn't stay." She studied me for a moment, then shrugged. "I need someone to handle morning inventory and stocking. 4 days a week, 6 to noon. Cash. I'll take it." She seemed surprised I didn't negotiate or ask questions. "You start tomorrow?" "Sure." I walked back to the lake house, tired but satisfied. My phone had 17 missed calls and twice as many texts. I scrolled through them without reading. The last message from her father. "This has gone on long enough. Call us back." I deleted them all and turned the phone off. The next morning, I walked the 8 miles to town in the pre-dawn dark. The work was straightforward. Unpacking deliveries, organizing shelves, checking inventory against orders. The store owner, whose name was Ruth, mostly left me alone. By the end of the week, I had cash in my pocket and a routine. Walk to town in the morning, work until noon, walk back. Spend afternoons on maintenance projects around the house. Fix the leaning boathouse. Clear the overgrown paths. Organize the shed properly. I found a rhythm I hadn't known in years. The phone remained off most of the time, but when I checked it, the messages had evolved. Concern had become frustration. Frustration had become anger. They couldn't understand why I wasn't responding, why I wasn't playing my assigned role in their little psychological drama. After 2 weeks, I finally called my wife back. "Where have you been?" she demanded immediately. "We've been calling nonstop." "I've been busy." "Busy? You're supposed to be learning a lesson about self-reliance, not ignoring us." "I am learning about self-reliance." A pause. "What does that mean?" "It means I got a job. I've been working." The silence stretched so long I thought the call dropped. "You got a job," she repeated slowly. "Where?" "General store in town. Morning shifts. You're supposed to be at the house. Waiting. Thinking about what you need to change." "I'm thinking about it. Just not the way you expected." "This isn't funny. Pack your things. We're coming to get you this weekend." "I don't want you to come get me." "Excuse me. I like it here. The work is honest. The people are straightforward. Nobody plays games." Her voice rose. "This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child." "I'm acting like an adult who's been given an unexpected opportunity. Your family wanted to see if I could handle adversity. I'm handling it. Just not the way you want it. You're supposed to realize how good you had it. You're supposed to come back grateful. Instead, I'm realizing how much better things could be." I hung up. Ruth gave me additional hours, covering afternoon shifts at the store. Another local, a contractor named Bill who came in for supplies, mentioned he needed help with a renovation project. Weekend work, cash under the table, learning on the job. I took that too. By week 3, I was earning more than I had at my office job. The cost of living was non-existent. I had free housing, could fish for food, and my only expenses were basic supplies. I was building actual skills, doing work I could see the results of at the end of each day. And I was sleeping better than I had in years. If you're still here, stay with me. This is where it got worse. My wife's family showed up on a Thursday afternoon. 3 vehicles pulling into the driveway like an invasion force. I was on the porch fixing a railing when they arrived. Her father climbed out first, her brother right behind him. Both looked angry. Enough games, her father said. Time to come home. I set down my hammer. This is home. At least for now. Don't be stupid. You've made your point. You're tougher than we thought. Great. Now pack your shit. No. Her brother stepped forward. You don't get to say no. This is our family's property. And I'm a guest who was invited to stay as long as necessary. By your definition, I'm still being tested. So I'm staying. My wife got out of her car. She looked exhausted. Please, can we just talk about this reasonably? Is there a reasonable explanation for abandoning your husband in the woods as a test? We were trying to help you. By humiliating me? By pushing you to be better. I laughed. It came out harsher than I intended. I am better. I have a job I don't hate. I'm learning skills that actually matter. I've met people who respect me without conditions. You did help me, just not the way you meant to. Her father's face darkened. You're embarrassing this family. People are asking questions. What are we supposed to tell them? Tell them the truth. That you abandoned me here and I decided to stay. Nobody will believe that. Then tell them I had a breakdown. Tell them whatever lets you sleep at night. But I'm not going back to being your project, your proof of concept, your entertainment. They tried different approaches. Guilt about my old job, which I'd already emailed my resignation to. Concerns about money, even though I was making more now. Appeals to our marriage, our future, our commitments. Nothing worked. Finally, my mother-in-law played what she thought was her ace. You know what your problem is? She said, and I realized she was echoing her words from months ago. You never had to fight for anything. Well, now you're running away from a fight. You're running away from your marriage, your responsibilities, everything that matters. That's not strength. That's cowardice. I looked at her for a long moment. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. I never fought before. I let people walk on me. I let them treat me like a project, a fixer-upper, something that needed improvement. I let them because I thought that's what family meant. Tolerance. Acceptance. Proving yourself worthy of love. I gestured to the house, the property, the life I'd built in 3 weeks. But you taught me something valuable. You showed me exactly what you think of me. You showed me that your love comes with conditions and tests and elaborate psychological experiments. And you showed me what it feels like to be free of all that. My wife started crying. Real tears this time, not manipulation. So thank you. I continued. Thank you for abandoning me. Thank you for showing me what I'm capable of. And thank you for making it crystal clear that I deserve better than what you were offering. They left without another word. I went back to fixing the railing. The weeks that followed had a strange quality to them, like I was living in a parallel version of my life where everything was quieter but more solid. The work at Ruth's store expanded into full-time when her part-time clerk quit. Bill, the contractor, started bringing me on more projects, not just grunt work, but actual skilled labor. He showed me how to properly frame a wall, how to read a level, how to install windows that would actually seal. You're better at this than half the guys I've hired with experience, he said one afternoon as we finished installing deck joists on a lakeside cabin. You think about what you're doing. Most guys just want to get it done. I was developing calluses, real ones, on my palms and fingers from handling tools and lumber. My shoulders ached most nights in a way that felt earned. I was leaner, stronger, tanned from working outside. When I caught my reflection in the lake house windows, I barely recognized myself. The satellite phone rang constantly for the first month. I stopped answering. The texts evolved from angry to pleading to coldly practical. Discussions of divorce, division of assets, legal obligations. My wife's lawyer sent formal letters to the lake house address. I responded through a lawyer in town, a semi-retired woman named Margaret who handled most of the local property disputes and seemed amused by my situation. They really just left you here? She asked during our first meeting. As a test of character. And now they want you to come back and pretend it never happened? More or less. She leaned back in her chair. You know, I've been practicing law for 40 years. Seen a lot of strange family dynamics. But this might take the prize. Is there any legal issue with me staying on property they invited you to indefinitely, while still legally married to their daughter? Not really. Though I imagine they'll eventually force the issue by claiming you're trespassing or squatting. Let them try. Margaret smiled. I like you. You've got more spine than they gave you credit for. 2 months in, I bought a used truck from a guy in town for $1,200 cash. It needed work, but Bill helped me diagnose the issues, and we fixed it over a weekend. Suddenly, those 8-mile walks to town were optional. I could take jobs further out, bring supplies back in bulk, actually build a life instead of just surviving. The lake house was becoming mine in ways that had nothing to do with ownership. I fixed everything that was broken, painted the exterior, replaced rotted boards, cleaned out years of accumulated junk from the basement. The boathouse was now straight and sturdy. The canoe was immaculate. The paths were clear and maintained. I was making the property worth more than it had been when they'd left me here. Ruth offered to sell me the store. We were doing inventory on a Tuesday morning when she brought it up. I'm 71 years old, she said. Been running this place for 30 years. My kids moved to the city, no interest in taking over. I'd like to retire before I'm too old to enjoy it. I don't have that kind of money, I said. I'm not talking about a fortune. The building's paid off. The business is steady. I need someone who'll keep it running, keep the community supplied. We can work out terms that make sense. I thought about it while stocking shelves. A permanent commitment to this place. No going back to my old life, not even as a possibility. Complete severance from everything I'd known. Let me think about it, I told her. That night, sitting on the porch with a beer, I called Margaret. The store owner wants to sell to me. Owner financed. Is that insane? Depends. Do you like it here? I do. Do you see yourself leaving anytime soon? No. Then it's not insane. It's practical. You need income. The store provides that. And it gives you roots, which might help in the divorce proceedings. How so? Harder for them to claim you're having a breakdown or acting irrationally if you're running a successful business. Shows clear-headed planning. Stability. The divorce. Right. I'd been so focused on building this new life that I'd almost forgotten the old one was still technically attached. They're pushing for a hearing, Margaret continued. Want to argue that you abandoned the marriage, that you're mentally unfit, that the separation was involuntary on her part. Involuntary? They literally drove away and left me here, which is why we have a very strong counterargument. But it would help to show you're thriving, not just surviving out of spite. I bought the store. Ruth and I worked out terms that were more than fair, low down payment, reasonable monthly installments, and she agreed to stay on part-time for 6 months to help with the transition. The paperwork was signed on a Friday afternoon in Margaret's office. Congratulations, Ruth said, shaking my hand. You're officially a small business owner. It felt surreal. For months ago, I'd been an accountant in a suburban office, married to a woman whose family thought I needed breaking in like a wild horse. Now I owned a general store in a mountain town where people knew my name and actually seemed to like me. That weekend, my wife showed up alone. I was closing the store when I saw her car pull into the small parking lot. She got out slowly, like she was approaching something dangerous. I locked the door and waited. Nice truck, she said, gesturing to my vehicle. It runs. I heard you bought the store. Word travels. She looked different. Tired. There were circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Can we talk? We probably should. We sat in my truck because it felt neutral. Her car held too many memories of our old life, and I didn't want her in the lake house. I need you to understand something, she started. When we planned this, when my family suggested it, I really thought it would help. I thought it would make you more. More what? More confident. More assertive. More like the kind of man who could handle my family. Your family doesn't need handling. They need boundaries. She flinched. They mean well. Do they? Because from where I'm sitting, they meant to humiliate me. To prove I was weak. To give themselves entertainment and call it family bonding. That's not fair, isn't it? Your brother filmed my reaction. He was expecting me to break down, to beg. Your whole family was. That's not concern. That's cruelty. We thought you'd last maybe 3 days. Then you'd call, we'd come get you. And you'd have a funny story about the time you survived alone at the lake house. I stared at her. A funny story. A bonding experience. Proof that you could handle tough situations. And when I didn't call, when I got a job instead, when I built an actual life here. She looked out the window. Then it stopped being funny. Then my family started panicking because their plan backfired. Then my father started saying, maybe you weren't the man he thought you were. He was right about that. I'm not the man he thought I was. I'm better. You're different. Yes. I miss who you were. The honesty caught me off guard. I'd expected anger, justification, maybe more manipulation. But this raw admission, she missed the version of me that let her family treat me like a project. That person was suffocating, I said quietly. I just didn't realize it until you gave me space to breathe. So that's it. For years of marriage, just gone. You made that choice when you drove away. I'm just living with the consequences. She started crying. Not the performative tears from before, but genuine grief. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I didn't think you'd choose this over us. I didn't choose this over us. You chose humiliating me over respecting me. I'm just refusing to come back for more. My family was wrong. I see that now. But marriages survive worse. People work through things. Some things, yes. But your family didn't make a mistake. They executed a plan. 6 months of planning. Coordinated deception. Deliberate psychological manipulation. That's not a mistake you work through. That's a revelation of character. So you're punishing me forever for one bad decision? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just finally putting myself first. She wiped her eyes. Everyone thinks you're having a breakdown. That you're not thinking clearly. Let them think that. I told them the truth. That you're actually doing well. That you're happy here. You know what my mother said? I waited. She said that proves you never really loved me. That if you did, you'd be miserable without me. The twisted logic was almost impressive. My adaptation was evidence of insufficient love. What do you think? I asked. She took a long time to answer. I think I never really knew you. I thought I married someone safe, predictable, malleable. Some of my family could mold. And maybe you were that person, or maybe you were just pretending to be. But whoever this is, she gestured at me, the truck, the life I'd built. This isn't who I thought I married. No, I agreed. This is who I actually am. You just never asked. She left 20 minutes later. We didn't hug, didn't make promises to stay in touch, didn't pretend this was anything but an ending. The divorce papers would move forward. The lawyers would handle the details. We'd split our minimal shared assets and go our separate ways. As I watched her taillights disappear, I felt something unexpected. Not triumph, not vindication, just a quiet sense of completion, like a chapter ending properly instead of trailing off mid-sentence. Winter came early that year. By November, the lake had a skin of ice in the mornings. The store stayed busy with hunters and locals preparing for the season. Bill and I finished winterizing several cabins for clients who wouldn't return until spring. I insulated the lake house properly, something that apparently had never been done. Sealed the windows, upgraded the heating system, made sure the generator was in perfect condition. When the first real snow came in December, I was ready. The divorce was finalized in January. Margaret called to tell me it was done. Clean break, she said. No alimony either direction. You keep the business and your assets, she keeps hers. Her family tried to claim the lake house should revert to them. But since they're the ones who invited you to stay indefinitely, and since you've made substantial improvements to the property, the judge wasn't sympathetic. So I can stay? Until they formally evict you, which would require proving you're damaging the property or violating some agreement. Given that you've increased its value significantly, that's going to be difficult. A week later, a for sale sign appeared at the end of the driveway. They were selling the lake house. I called Margaret immediately. Can they do that? It's their property. But as a tenant, even an informal one, you have rights. They have to give you notice, follow proper eviction procedures. And, she paused. You could make an offer. I don't have that kind of money. You might be surprised. It's been on the market for years before. Remote location, needs work, except you've already done most of the work. And you're a local business owner now with steady income. Banks like that. I met with a loan officer at the regional bank in the larger town 40 minutes away. She reviewed my financials, the store's books, my construction income, my minimal expenses, and nodded thoughtfully. The property's been listed at $240,000. Overpriced for this market. If you can get them down to 180, maybe 200, I think we can make this work. My mother-in-law nearly had a stroke when Margaret submitted my offer. $175,000, cash sale, quick closing. She called my phone directly, bypassing the lawyers. This is obscene. You're trying to steal our family property. I'm making a market rate offer on a house that's been for sale for 3 years. That house has been in our family for 50 years. Then maybe you shouldn't have used it as a prop in your psychological experiment. You're doing this to hurt us. I'm doing this because I need a place to live and you're selling. That's business, not revenge. We'll never accept your offer. They accepted it 3 weeks later when no other offers materialized. The closing was handled entirely through lawyers. I never saw them again. In March, I signed the paperwork and the lake house became mine. Fully, legally, permanently mine. That night, I built a fire in the fireplace, my fireplace, and sat in the living room, my living room, and let the reality sink in. I'd arrived here 8 months ago with nothing but a backpack and the sound of car doors slamming. They'd expected me to break, to fail, to come crawling back grateful for their intervention. Instead, I'd built a life. A real one, constructed from honesty and work and actual respect. I owned a business that served the community. I owned property that I'd restored with my own hands. I had skills I'd never known I could develop. I had friends who valued me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. The irony was almost poetic. They'd tried to teach me a lesson about struggle and self-reliance. They'd succeeded, just not in any way they'd intended. Spring brought new construction projects. Bill took me on as a full partner in his contracting business. We hired 2 apprentices and took on bigger jobs. The store continued to thrive. Ruth fully retired and spent her days traveling, sending me postcards from places she'd always wanted to see. I dated occasionally. Nothing serious. The women in town were friendly but cautious. I was the guy with the dramatic backstory. After all, that was fine. I wasn't in a hurry. I'd spent years trying to be what someone else wanted. Now I was learning what I actually wanted. My ex-wife's family never contacted me again. Mutual acquaintances said they'd told people I'd stolen their property, that I'd manipulated the situation, that I was vindictive and cruel. Let them tell it however they needed to. The truth was simpler and stranger than their version anyway. On the 1-year anniversary of being abandoned, I threw a party. Nothing elaborate, just a cookout at the lake house for the people who'd become my community. Ruth and her husband, Bill and his wife, the regulars from the store, some of the contractors I'd worked with, Margaret and her partner. Someone asked how I'd ended up here, and I gave them the short version. They listened with increasing disbelief. Your own family did that, Bill's wife asked. In-laws. Former in-laws. And you just stayed? Seemed like the better option. Ruth raised her beer. Well, their loss is our gain. Here's to bad plans backfiring spectacularly. Everyone drank to that. Later, sitting on the dock as the party wound down, Margaret joined me. You know, I've been thinking about your case, she said. It's one of the strangest I've ever handled, but also one of the cleanest. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't try to hurt them. You just refused to accept their version of who you were supposed to be. Felt like the only option. Most people can't do that. Most people need others' approval too badly. They'll twist themselves into knots trying to be what someone else wants. I did that for years. But not anymore. No, not anymore. She stood to leave, then paused. You ever regret it? Staying? Building all this instead of trying to fix things? I thought about the question honestly. About the life I'd left behind. The suburban house, the office job, the family dinners where I was always slightly outside the circle. About the marriage that had been built on my willingness to be shaped and molded. No, I said. I don't regret any of it. 2 years later, I expanded the store. Added a small cafe section that served breakfast and lunch to the construction crews and locals. Hired 3 employees. The contracting business was booking projects 6 months out. I'd become one of the more successful people in town. Not wealthy, but stable and respected. I saw my ex-wife once, by accident. I was in the city picking up specialized materials for a job, stopped at a coffee shop, and there she was. She looked good. Professional. Together. Different haircut. We made eye contact. She hesitated, then came over. Hi, she said. Hi. You look well. Thanks. You too. An awkward silence. Years of history, all compressed into this mundane moment. I heard you're doing really well. The store and everything. It's been good. Steady. I'm glad. Really. She seemed to mean it. For what it's worth, I think about that weekend sometimes. About what we did. It was wrong. Yeah, it was. I'm sorry. Genuinely. I wish I could go back and, I don't know, be smarter, braver, stand up to my family. It worked out. For you, maybe. I spent a year in therapy unpacking my family dynamics. Turns out they're pretty toxic. Who knew? She smiled, but it was sad. My therapist says I'm attracted to people I can control. Working on that. Good luck with it. You're not angry anymore. I can tell. No, I agreed. I'm not. Hard to be angry when things turned out better than I could have planned. We talked for a few more minutes, the conversation covering safe topics, weather, work, mutual acquaintances. Then she checked her watch and said she had to go. We hugged briefly, awkwardly, and went our separate ways. I didn't feel satisfaction or vindication, just a kind of peaceful closure. She'd been part of one chapter. I was deep into the next one. The lake house is mine completely now. I've added a workshop, upgraded the dock, built a proper garage for equipment. In the summers, I rent out the renovated boathouse on Airbnb to offset costs. It's become a successful side income. I'm seeing someone. A woman named Claire who teaches at the regional school and lives 2 towns over. She knows my whole story and finds it amusing rather than concerning. Most people's origin stories involve overcoming obstacles, she said once. Yours involves being given the obstacle as a gift and deciding to keep it. We're taking it slow, which suits both of us. She has her own baggage, her own reasons for being careful. But there's an honesty between us that I never had before. We're both too old and too tired to play games. Last month, I got a message on social media. My former brother-in-law, the one who'd filmed my reaction, expecting entertainment. Hey man, I know this is weird, but I wanted to reach out. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what we did. It was fucked up. Like, really fucked up. I convinced myself we were helping, but we were just being cruel. Anyway, no expectation of response. Just wanted you to know I see it clearly now. You were right to stay. I would have too. I didn't respond. Some apologies arrived too late to matter. But I did think about it. About how their plan had been designed to break me, to prove I was weak, to validate their assumptions about my character. Instead, it had freed me from caring about their validation at all. They'd given me an ultimatum they thought was unwinnable: survive alone or admit defeat. I'd chosen a third option: thrive alone and forget the game entirely. 3 years after being abandoned, I'm sitting on my porch, mine, legally and spiritually, watching the sun set over my lake. The store's numbers are strong. The contracting business is expanding into architectural consultation. Claire's coming up this weekend, and we're going to kayak to the far shore where I've heard there are wild blueberries. My phone buzzes. A text from Ruth. New kid started today. Reminds me of you when you first showed up. Lost but determined. I like him. I smile and text back. Give him a chance. You never know who people really are until they get the space to figure it out. The sun drops below the tree line, painting the sky orange and purple and gold. Tomorrow I'll wake up at 5:30, drive to the store, work until noon, then head to a job site where we're building a custom home for a retired couple from Boston. Honest work, honest pay, honest relationships. They tried to teach me a lesson about struggle, about proving myself, about earning my place in their family. Instead, they taught me something more valuable: that the only person whose expectations I need to meet are my own. That approval given conditionally isn't worth having. That sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are so you can decide if you want them in your life. I don't know if they ever understood what they did. If they ever grasped that their psychological experiment didn't reveal my weakness, but their cruelty. If they ever realized that you can't force someone to be grateful for mistreatment. But it doesn't matter anymore. 300 miles from where I used to live, in a house I've made entirely my own, surrounded by a community I've earned through work and honesty, I found something they never expected me to discover. I found peace. And unlike their love, their approval, their conditional acceptance, this peace doesn't come with tests or trials or elaborate games. It's just mine, and I'm keeping it. If this story resonated with you, I'd appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. More stories coming soon.